Shane, we're a third of the way through the regular season now as we just completed week 3, and really looking at the way things are shaking out, the Northwest Division has really set its tone with what we kind of anticipated, where your top teams are battling out are Forreston, Lena Winslow, and EPC. Obviously, Dakota already got a taste of what Forreston is. Lena Winslow did beat Forreston, and EPC has jumped out to as expected, 3-0 start, but they're going to get their first true test here come this week. And then on the other side of the division, in the upstate, Aquin's really setting the pace as we anticipated, while you have Stockton, Milledgeville, Polo, and Orangeville doing exactly kind of what we thought. They've all beat each other. Stockton beat Milledgeville, Polo, Orangeville, but all those games have been within a score, and they all find themselves at a 2-1 record after the first 3 weeks.
Right. Realistically, everything's pretty much laid down the way we thought it would. A few games, the final score wasn't exactly what we thought. Case in point this week with Dakota and Forreston. Like you said, Aquin really setting the tone, and you got a 4-way battle going in the rest. And then the Northwest, it's pretty much the same teams year in and year out. Picking the top of the Northwest isn't as difficult as kind of sorting through the muck of the upstate. But like you said, everything's pretty much right in line with what we thought it'd be.
Yeah, and you start to look at how things are breaking down, and you start to think, man, we could easily see 9 playoff teams coming out of the NUIC this year. And you still got that potential opportunity for EPC to fall into Class 1A, which would make the NUIC playoff gauntlet all there. And if West Carroll sneaks in, unfortunately for them, they'll still be in 2A. But to get 8 teams in the 1A bracket, that would be basically a conference tournament 1 through 16.
Right. And it's funny you mention that because, they got rid of the quadrant system for that reason alone. So they went to the 116, and you're talking about half of them still coming from the NUIC. Granted, it'll be interesting to see if EPC actually falls into 1A. Me personally, I don't know if that's going to be the case. But obviously, we got some even better teams that will fall into the North that would normally be a 2A team that might sneak down into 1A this year as well.
That's true. And, you got to thank Morrison, who is traditionally a 2A school, has a 1A enrollment. They're off to a 3-0 start this year, which if they do get in, that's going to help keep that number from reaching that 320 mark.
Right.
But they still got a tough schedule ahead as they still have to play Newman, Fulton, who's that other one that they got over? Oh, Rockridge. So they still got a ways to go. But 5-4 is looking good for the Mustangs down in the Three Rivers Conference. But at the same token, you look at where the cut line is right now for IHSA, and they have it at the 287 mark. However, if you take out the Chicago Public League schools that are currently listed as 1A schools, and you take out the 8-man teams that are still in there, you can see that mark actually jumping up to 299 as of right now, which would bring Fulton down into 1A. But like you said, on Monday we'll find out as they come out with the first playoff outlook, so that'll give us some information as we move forward after week 4, looking into week 5.
Right, and another thing, a team we haven't really talked about, as far as the playoff push, but something as simple as from last year to this year, we anticipate Orangeville right on that line again. So that is also another team that will make a team on that cut line stay in 2A, whereas if Orangeville didn't make the playoffs, that drops them back down into 1A.
Well, and speaking on that fact, too, now with River Ridge beating Galena, they just gained an additional playoff point that probably the majority of the people, ourselves included, did not expect happening, especially with the Northwest dominance over the upstate side of the conference.
Well, and that's just it. And then vice versa, it hurts the Northwest teams that need that extra playoff point, like
Dakota, Carroll.
Like Dakota at 5-4 with a crossover of AFC, you're not getting into playoffs. So that point really is crucial, but hats off to River Ridge on the victory.
Yep, so we are heading into week 4, and we will start that breakdown right now. Okay, so we're heading back to Bronco country where Orangeville is going to play host to AFC. AFC comes in this game at 1-2, while Orangeville comes in the game at 2-1. Last week AFC lost to Aquin as we expected, 42-19, and Orangeville also beat Warren in an expected win for the Broncos, 46-0. Last year in this matchup, Shane, Orangeville beat AFC 30-22. And this game happened in week 6 last year. Now it's happening in week 4. Orangeville's probably still feeling that they should be 3-0 coming in this game.
Right.
Realistically, for Orangeville to make the playoffs, in my opinion, this is a must-win game for the Broncos, especially looking forward at their schedule still moving out. AFC is also definitely in must-win territory here, so this could be a very good matchup come Friday night.
Yeah, like you said, both teams in must-win. Obviously, AFC, the season hasn't quite gone the way you thought it would. You had that big loss to Dakota, and you beat River Ridge to open the season. Kind of laid down. I mean, you played Aquin close in the first half, closer than what we thought it'd be, but ultimately losing the way you did.
It's eerily similar to last year's game.
Right.
Between those two.
Which, on paper, doesn't make sense, but I guess that's why you play the games. But for me, this game is more about Orangeville than it is AFC. You know, Broncos trying to get to the playoffs for the first time in quite a while. And realistically, Orangeville's, I don't know if that week 2 win kind of was a little slower than what they thought, because they still had a little bit of a upset feeling about that loss to Polo to open the season that maybe they thought they should have won. But obviously last week against Warren was a good time to get things going offensively, and you know, they really are starting to come into their own, kind of where we thought they'd be.
Well, I mean, and no disrespect to Warren, but Orangeville needed a game like that, just as you stated, because you got to get that run game going. They've been trying to get the run game going, but it's been rather inconsistent. The passing game hasn't gotten off to the start that they had anticipated it being as well. So they got a lot of things to work with. I mean, this past week they only threw the ball 4 times against Warren, going 2 for 4 for 52 yards, which isn't bad, obviously, but it's also not to the tier that you're used to seeing out of Orangeville throwing the ball. So they were definitely working on their run game. They need to work on their line play, especially against some of these other teams that are going to be a little bit stronger than they are up front. And AFC is one of those teams, I think.
Right. So, like you said, you know, obviously only 4 passes in a game. I mean, that's in the territory of a power run team that you see on the other end of the conference, on the other side. So, I look for Orangeville to really get that passing game going more against AFC, because not only are they going to have to, but, you know, they really haven't done it much to this point, which is not what we anticipated.
And that goes the same for AFC. I mean, I expected a little bit more out of them at this point in the season. You look at who they have throwing the ball and who they have running the ball, who they have catching the ball, and their linemen, and they have players that can make plays, but it just hasn't come to fruition for them thus far. And really what they need to do is they need to get that run game going. I mean, I can't remember off the top of my head, but I don't think they've ran for over 100 yards in a game yet, and they got a good running team.
Right. I mean, but in AFC's defense, I mean, they have played 2 pretty decent teams in their first 3 games.
Yes.
So, I mean, those are games looking at on the schedule. You kind of anticipated a loss, just maybe not in the way that it shook out to be.
Right, correct. And I agree with you on that. Dakota and Aquin definitely predicted to be losses at the beginning of the season. As such, they were. But yes, you expect AFC to play a little bit closer than they had in those 2 games. In this matchup, though, in Orangeville, I do like the Broncos coming out with their 3rd win.
Yeah, 3-1 going into week 5. Good place for Orangeville to be.
Yes, it is. River Ridge and Warren, a battle of previous co-ops. Warren comes into the game 0-3, while River Ridge comes into the game with a 1-2 record. Last week, Warren lost to Orangeville 46-0, as we previously mentioned, and River Ridge came up with an upset of Galena 8-3. Last year, Warren won this game 34-6 in week 4, and both of these teams end up finishing with similar records at 2-7. Obviously, this year's a little bit different. Warren does not have their co-op with Rockford Our Lady of the Sacred Heart, and they're no longer with River Ridge either, which they haven't been for a few years.
Right. You kind of feel bad for Warren almost. I mean, not a lot of kids in the program. Have some athletes, but, the numbers just aren't there. I mean, we talk about a team on the northwest side that's kind of going through a similar downfall, and, it's just another reminder that Warren's another year removed from those playoff runs they had a few years ago. And hats off to River Ridge. Beat Galena, which, is good for the program regardless of how Galena is this year. Definitely not many people, ourselves included, picked River Ridge to win that game. And looking at the schedule, we thought maybe that might be Galena's only win. So hats off to River Ridge last week. But I just don't know if Warren's going to have anywhere near being able to keep up with River Ridge this week.
I don't think so either, and I like what both coaches, Coach McNutt at Warren is trying to do there. I like what Coach Nicholas is doing at River Ridge. Him and his staff are really getting a lot of these kids out. They're starting to build something at River Ridge. Granted, they're not going to make the playoffs. They're off to a 1-2 start. It's still possible, but realistically, they're going to have to get to 6 wins, so they still need 5 more wins. Looking down their schedule, I don't see that happening. But I like the direction that River Ridge is going. So, Coach Nicholas has done a great job there. As far as this matchup goes, River Ridge is going to be pumped up. They beat Galena in Galena.
Right.
It's one of the hardest places to win a football game. Warren, unfortunately, Warren's going to struggle this year as we anticipated them doing. And when you have the lack of numbers and when you only have 6 truly aged varsity players and you're playing with 17 kids total in the program, you're going to struggle unless you have a more junior or senior dominated team, which they don't.
Right, and looking at the schedule for Warren, doesn't get any easier. If you're Warren, you feel like this is one of your few chances to get a victory. Maybe that'll help motivate him a little bit, but for Warren, you're still talking about Milledgeville. You're talking about Lena Winslow, Polo yet.
All teams are expected to make the playoffs.
Right, and you throw in a non-conference with South Beloit, but even the way they've been the last couple of years is a little more improved than the South Beloit we saw in the NUIC. So tough sledding for Warren, unfortunately, and I just can't pick them this week either.
No, I can't either. I like the Wildcats getting the win number 2 here in week 4. Milledgeville hosts Midland River Valley. Midland River Valley used to be in the Three Rivers Conference, but after many seasons of torture, they have moved to the Northeast Athletic Conference, where they now play with the likes of Marquette and South Beloit and Kirkland, Hiawatha. River Valley comes in this game with a 1-2 record, while Milledgeville comes in with a 2-1 record. And last week, River Valley lost to Hiawatha 57-8, while Milledgeville lost to Stockton in a nail-biter 22-20 in what was our upstate game of the week. This is the first ever meeting between these two teams, Shane. What are your thoughts on the upcoming matchup?
Well, just to be a little bit of a smart aleck here, you look at River Valley and them losing to Hiawatha by the way they did, and then you look at what Aquin was able to do to Hiawatha, and you put Milledgeville very close to the same playing field as Aquin, so Milledgeville should win this one about 89-0. No, in all seriousness, should ring the victory bell early, often. get your work done, get on the field, get off, chalk up another victory.
Yeah, this should be a pretty easy walk in the park for Milledgeville.
Don't get cocky, but
don't be cocky. Come in, play your game, do what you're supposed to do, take care of business. Like Shane said in the preseason, this is your business trip for the week. Get past River Valley, get to 3-1.
I mean, you do have Orangeville next week, so
yeah,
maybe work on some things that you want to exploit on Orangeville a little bit. Obviously, don't put much on film, but kind of work on what you want to going into next week.
Well, I mean, if I were Orangeville, I wouldn't be picking this game to watch film on.
Exactly. So,
and I wouldn't expect many people are going to be putting much into the game. So, like you said, I mean, this is a great opportunity to practice some things against another opponent outside of yourselves, and to see how it's going to work in a game-like situation.
Get some of them underclass kids in, and sure, no different than a running clock anywhere else.
Right, exactly. Get the experience, get people playing the game.
I'm just curious.
Get to 3-1.
I mean, we were looking at this before, but I'm just curious who did Midland even beat. I mean, you know.
They beat Rockford, Our Lady of the Sacred Heart.
So, yeah, and you've seen what Warren did on the other side of that this year so far. So, I mean, there's really not much left to talk about. Milledgeville show up, win the game, get looking forward to Orangeville.
Yeah.
Realistically.
I mean, expect all 36 kids to run through and ring the victory bell, like you said. Our crossover matchup takes us back to Stockton, where they will host West Carroll in a much-anticipated matchup for the week as the Thunder come in with a 2-1 record, matching the Blackhawks' 2-1 record. Last week, Shane, West Carroll struggled to a 28-6 win against Amboy, while Stockton came out with a big road win against Milledgeville, 22-20. Last time these two teams met, they actually haven't. Before West Carroll consolidated, Stockton last beat Savannah back in 2002, 36-6. So this is actually the first meeting between West Carroll and Stockton since West Carroll's consolidation. I anticipate what should be a very good ball game. I think Stockton's going to have a lot on their hands, but coming out of that game with Milledgeville here this past week, they have that under their belt.
Right. Yeah. Obviously, Stockton 2-1, you feel a lot better than going into this game if you were 1-2. For me, this game's kind of a telltale for both sides. I mean, West Carroll played Lena Winslow toughish in the second half. I mean, the score was a lot closer than the game indicated. Stockton lost that game to Ottawa Marquette and then obviously beat Milledgeville. We have both teams respectively in the middle of the pack of each conference, so to speak. So for me, it's whether that's going to be validated or if, I mean, obviously we know that the northwest side of the conference is more dominant. We'll see how they match up on both sides when they're in similar places in the standings. I mean, years past, you look at this and say, okay, well, Stockton rolls. I don't see that this year. And obviously, West Carroll's got a good physical ball club. Well, for me, it's actually going to be seeing if Stockton can handle a physical West Carroll team.
Right, and West Carroll is more physical this year. You did see that in the Lena Winslow game. I mean, granted, Lena Winslow put that game away as they were up 28-6 before West Carroll scored two more times and Lena put one more up to make it a two-score final game at 34-20. But, I mean, West Carroll did show up for the first half against Lena Winslow. It was only 14-0 at halftime. They played very well. They drove deep into Lena Winslow territory and made mistakes happen, which turned the ball over on downs and gave Lena Win possession, and they just didn't finish their drives. This game, too, has some underlying story behind it because, as everybody knows, Coach Lightson is a Stockton guy. He wanted to have the Stockton job And granted, they went with another hometown guy with head coach Jesse Snyder. Either way Stockton went, in my opinion. I don't feel either way would have been a bad decision.
Right. Stockton won regardless.
But, you know, I'm sure Coach Lightson wants to beat Stockton. Granted, he wants to beat anybody, of course, because he's the head coach. He's competitive. But, you know, there's just a little bit extra when it's your hometown team and you have that going for you. But as far as the game plan on the field, I mean, Stockton got a test last week with Milledgeville, as anticipated. They've had that test against Marquette, like you said, and they did not do so well in that one. Now you got West Carroll, a more physical team coming out of the northwest side. Here's Stockton's opportunity of saying, hey, we're just as good as the middle part of that northwest side of the conference. And if they do, then they for sure will make the playoffs. I don't see Stockton not making the playoffs, but they still got, you know, they still have to play Aquin and Orangeville and Polo, so they still got some matchups coming up.
Right, and, you know, for Stockton, it is kind of like a playoff test. I mean, West Carroll's going to go 2-8, but it gives you that feel on the stronger side of the conference. I think we disagree on this, but I'm going to take Stockton home. I think they're going to be up for the challenge.
And I like the Thunder. I think Coach Lightson's going to have these guys ready to go. I don't put much stock onto their struggles last week in Amboy. I think that they can regroup and play more like they did against Lena Winslow on the road and take it to Stockton. Du-Pec Amboy is going to be a game, Shane, that I could see being somewhat of a close contest here. For both teams, unfortunately, they both come into this game with an 0-3 record, so this gives one of them the opportunity to get that win on the win column. Last week, Du-Pec lost 48-0 to EPC, and I mean, for Du-Pec, they've kind of had a rough go at the start of the season facing Forreston, West Carroll, and EPC. They really got a taste of what the top tier, the northwest side of the standings are. And granted, they're going to see some later too, as they still got to play Dakota and Lena Winslow. Amboy, on the other hand, also has done the same, as they've already played EPC in West Carroll. Last week, Amboy lost to West Carroll 28-6. So I mean, they played West Carroll a lot tougher than Du-Pec did. Just a couple weeks ago. Last year, Amboy did beat Pectonica in a very close ball game, 7-0, and that game took place in week 8. Obviously, this isn't just Pectonica anymore, right, as we got Durand in there now too. So it does provide more depth for Du-Pec. It will be a very interesting matchup, I think. What are your thoughts on this matchup here?
Well, yeah. I mean, anytime you get 0-3 teams, you're always hungry for that first win. And like you said, Du-Pec, the schedule has not done Du-Pec's new co-op any favors. Granted, the brunt of it is over, except, I mean, obviously, you still have Lena Winslow and whatever Dakota is. Du-Pec has a good, fresh, soft team. That won't matter in this game. But for me, Du-Pec is still just a little bit away yet. I mean, Amboy is not very good, but for some reason, they have a way of playing tough at home in games that they shouldn't be close in. I mean, West Carroll should have blown their doors off last week and didn't. We saw that last year against a couple teams down Amboy. Amboy at home, still a little bit better than what Du-Pec is at this point.
And I would have to agree with your assessment. I mean, Amboy is a football town.
Right.
They've always been a football town. I think that's why you see them play tough at home. It's tradition. It's a long drive for a lot of the schools coming out of the Northwest Division. So, I mean, traveling down there on a Friday afternoon, you get there and you're like,
now we gotta play.
Now we gotta play. Well, guess what? You should already be prepared for that. You know, take a nap on the bus ride. That's fine. I get that. I took naps on every bus ride. But you got to be ready to go. You got to start doing something during that fresh off contest that gets you mentally prepared and ready to go out on the field of battle and play the game. Amboy is going to be tough at home. We already know they are. Like you, I think I like the Clippers in this matchup. So, Shane, we got Dakota and East Dubuque. This one's going to be played in Dakota. East Dubuque comes in with a 1-2 record, while Dakota comes in with a 2-1 record. Last week, East Dubuque lost to Lena Winslow 59-0 at the Lee Win Athletic Bowl, while Dakota took a thumping in what was our Northwest game of the week, losing to Forreston 40-0. Last year in this matchup, which also took place in week 4, Dakota won this game 28-6. Looking ahead to this year's game, I still see Dakota as the favorite, but both teams coming off of huge losses. Who's going to rebound the best?
Well, all right. Dakota's got more athleticism, more talent. Whether they show up and play their game or not, it's going to be another question. East Dubuque, we thought would be a little more improved this year. Realistically, I mean, it all started when EPC laid the hurting on them. It hasn't gotten much better. I anticipate that a lot from East Dubuque going forward this year as they play the tougher teams. Really, you know, if Dakota does not come off that loss and put a hurting on East Dubuque, there is a problem in Indian land.
And I would have to agree with you. East Dubuque, the last 2 seasons have really favored from an easier start to the schedule. Last year they jumped out to that 4-1 start, lost 4 consecutive games. And outside of their Week 9 loss to EPC, which was still a 2-score loss, they got annihilated in Weeks 6, 7, and 8. They didn't even score a point in those 3 weeks. This year, they started off the same direction. EPC, okay, thumping, beat Galena, expected, thumped by Lena Winslow. Now you got Dakota in Dakota as well, and they're coming off of their own no-show against Forreston. I mean, really, they did not look like the Dakota team that was put together the last 2 weeks, and Forreston, coming off that loss to Lena Winslow, they were pumped and fired, and they showed Dakota what they really were.
Right. It really all started after they moved the ball and had some penalties, and 7-0, that game was over. I mean, they flat out quit. You can't do that against good teams. Luckily, this week they have an easier opponent. Still got to show up and play the game, though.
Yep, and this is going to be a big one. You
got to get back on that winning track.
For East Dubuque, if they want to make the playoffs, this is a game that they have to win.
Right.
I mean, there's no doubt about that. In our preseason, we were looking at East Dubuque being one of the bowl teams, whether it be 3 and 6, but really more so 4 and 5, kind of mirroring what they did last year, knowing even still that the hard part of their schedule is at the beginning rather than the end. But Dakota, West Carroll, those are going to be the 2 teams you have to beat if you want to make the playoffs.
Right. And then you look at on the Dakota side, and you have, going forward now, you have to win games that on paper you should win.
Yes.
You lost to Forreston. You're going to lose to Lena Winslow, and you're probably going to lose the EPC, especially if you show up the way you did last Friday. So that comes down to West Carroll. So you absolutely have to beat East Dubuque, because 5-4 is not going to get you in the playoffs with AFC as a crossover.
No, it will not. Just doing the math, especially with Galena losing the River Ridge, I mean,
there's a point.
You're looking at 35 to 36 playoff points going 5-4. It ain't going to be enough to make the playoffs.
That's right where Orangeville was, or would have been last year.
Right, and that's where Aquin was the year before that when they missed that 5-4. So
you got to win the ones that you're supposed to win. So I don't anticipate a close game. I look forward to Dakota actually come out fired up, take care of business at home.
Yeah, I mean, talking to some of the coaching staff after the game last week in Forreston, and looking at the frustration on Coach Free's face,
said it all.
Yeah, it did. It really said it all. I think the team underperformed from what they had weeks 1 through 2. I mean, in my opinion, it did not look like the same team that we saw back in week 1 even. I like Dakota coming out and take care of East Dubuque at home. I believe it is their homecoming game as well, so they should be fired up for that. Shane, we start off with a big rivalry matchup, at least in past years, where Lena Winslow visits Galena. Lena Winslow comes in this game 3-0, and Galena comes in this game as expected at 0-3, which is hard to say because when have we ever expected Galena to be 0-3? But nonetheless, last week Lena Winslow beat East Dubuque 59-0, while Galena lost to River Ridge at home 8-3. Last year, Lena Winslow won this game 50-12. This game also taking place in week 4. Shane, what do we kind of look forward to in this game this year?
Well, I mean, you look at the schedule here, and most years this can be a trap game for Lena, and it's happened. A decent, I mean, not a great Galena team. It wasn't so long ago Lena Winslow traveled to Galena and came home with a loss. But, you know, those are different times. You know, so we picked the Midland River Valley at Milledgeville by 89-point differential there. So just to throw this out there, Dakota beat Galena 35-0. Forreston beat Dakota 40-0. And then you had Lena Winslow beat Forreston by 14. So you add up, that's another 89-0 victory potentially for the Panthers. Realistically.
That is crazy how that happened.
Right. Real number of the day, 89, I guess. Realistically, Rick Aaron doesn't do that. Get to 40, get your kids off. Enjoy it. Get ready for that EPC matchup the next week.
Well, and that's kind of like I was talking to somebody Friday night. You know, one of those games where Rob gets all of 5 carries, runs for 150 yards, scores 3 touchdowns type of game. Forreston runs for 6 carries, 120 yards, and scores another 3 touchdowns, and you're out of Galena with a win as expected. But realistically, those numbers may actually take place. But Lena Winslow needs to come in, and they need to stay focused. We keep talking about, I mean, Galena has the athletes. There's something going on in Galena, whether it be administration, the head coach, the parents, or the kids. Something isn't gelling there because they have the athletes. They have capable people to make things happen. What's going on?
Well, and you know, had our conversation not shifted to that, I was going to say, in all seriousness, how long is this going to be allowed to happen? Realistically. I don't want to call anybody out, but it might be time to get a new voice in there. I mean, you have the athletes, you got the size, you have the tradition, for the love of God. Might be time to start pushing some old things out.
Yep, I think change is definitely needed in Galena if you want to keep tradition going because
you're going to lose it.
Yeah, you're going to lose it, and you're going to lose it in a hurry.
Tradition takes a long time to build up, and it doesn't take long to get rid of it.
No.
It's kind of like a first impression, you know. A good first impression goes a long way. I mean, it takes a long time before you hear good things about someone, but it doesn't take long for something bad.
Right.
It's similar.
And I mean, you're playing what is the #1 ranked team in state in Lena Winslow. Just a couple of years ago, this was where Galena was.
Right.
2015, they started off as preseason #1. Held it for a couple of weeks before they got beat.
I mean, that's this year's seniors were sophomores. I mean, you're not removed that far.
Right. I mean, it's just...
it's disappointing, to be honest with you.
It is.
It doesn't help the conference any.
It doesn't because a lot of people still look at Galena as that tradition-rich team.
Right.
But, I mean, like you, I mean, Lena Winslow's going to win this big. It's not going to be 89-0. Coach Aaron never does that.
Right. He'll need the ball before it gets up there.
Oh, God. Of course he would. But I like the Panthers big in this one. Our upstate game of the week takes us to Connolly Field in Freeport, where the Aquin Bulldogs are going to be playing host to the Polo Marcos. Polo comes in this game with a 2-1 record, while Aquin comes in with the expected 3-0 mark. Last week, Polo beat Edwardsville Lutheran 55-6, and Aquin beat AFC after a slow start, finishing out 42-19. Last year, this game took place in Week 7, Shane, and Aquin won this game 34-20, and that was a game that was highly anticipated as a very good matchup, also being our upstate game of the week at that point last season as well. So, ironically, here we are again, Polo Aquin, upstate game of the week.
Right. It's really been that way for quite a while. I mean, Aquin has a history of being top of the upstate. I mean, Stockton as well, and Polo's had those few good years here lately where they've been, the class of the upstate as well. It's always fun when these two teams meet. You get Aquin with what they want to do offensively is different than Polo, and vice versa. And it ultimately comes back who's going to stop the run better, who's going to stop the pass better. Aquin has some injuries. It'll be interesting to see if they get some kids back this week. A few of them might be longer term than they'd originally thought. Aquin has started slow against Hiawatha. They started slow against AFC. They cannot afford to start slow it against Polo and let Polo hang in there for this week, I think.
I agree with you there, because Polo is one of those teams that you give them the lead, and they're going to make you pay for it. You saw that against Orangeville. I still feel Orangeville thinks that they should have beat Polo, but Polo got that lead, and they didn't relinquish it. Now, Aquin, Orangeville, Aquin's just a little bit taller than Orangeville as far as what I see them in overall talent.
Right.
But I'm not going to say that Orangeville can't compete with Aquin. Therefore, I'm not going to say Polo can't compete with Aquin.
Well, that's just it. It's something we were talking about in the preview of this video. I mean, you look realistically, the top 5 teams in the upstate. I mean, we have Aquin just a touch ahead of the rest, and the rest is kind of, you put it into a hat, you shake it out, you draw a name, that's the team that's going to win that.
A salad bowl.
Right. And Aquin, I guess, is the dressing because they cover all of it. Realistically, though, Aquin mistake-free football. Move the ball on the run, open up the pass the ball, open up the run. Mistakes aside, Aquin at home is a tough place to play. Polo will have to do something out of the ordinary to get the win here.
Right.
I feel.
And I agree. I mean, actually, Aquin being a tough place at home, both schools, Polo and Aquin, fell into our top 9 as the toughest places to play. As far as the MUIC is concerned, at home. Aquin obviously being much higher than winning at Polo. Aquin was 4th on our list. So, I mean, Connolly Field's a tough place to play. To be honest, I hated playing there.
Yep.
It's not a nice field. I mean, it's a great setting, but the field surface itself is terrible. I know that because it hasn't changed since I played. In fact, I just played on it here 3 years ago even in an alumni game. So, but it's Polo Aquin. Good rivalry here. I do think that Aquin needs to get the run game going. Unfortunately, they have not had much success in doing so. And realistically, with who they have, granted, they have one out, but the other one should be getting things going. I mean, talking about someone who has the potential of being a 2,000-yard career rusher, and right now they're looking at finishing about 1,600 yards for the career because Aquin's just not getting that run game going. And it goes right back into what we said last year where Aquin struggles to run against better teams. But I like the Dogs at home. I think Aquin gets to 4-0, setting up their playoff, or not their playoff matchup, but a big matchup with Forreston in Week 5.
And I couldn't disagree at all. I see the same thing happening. Aquin at home over Polo.
Okay, our Northwest game of the week takes us to Lanark, where EPC will play Forreston. Forreston getting our game of the week, third week in a row, but you know, when you're the defending state champ and you're playing the top of the conference in the first 3 of the 4 weeks, you're going to have the highlight game of the week. Forreston comes in this game with 2-1 record, while EPC comes in with that expected 3-0 mark. Last week, the Forreston beat Dakota 40-0. Wasn't so much the win that was expected, but the margin of victory was a huge difference than what was expected, as Dakota really just didn't show up for the game outside of the first 6 minutes. EPC did beat Du-Pec 48-0. Kind of another expected game there taking place in Durand. Shane, last year this was a game that you attended in Week 8 where Forreston won 21-7. Do you think this is a game that we can anticipate a similar score, or do you think it's going to be a little bit different this time around?
No, I don't, and I'll tell you why. Forreston, to me, has worked out. That loss against let's put it this way, that loss against Winslow was probably the best thing that could have happened to Forreston. Not that they were getting complacent or anything, but kind of shows you where if you're not on your game, you can have such and such exploited. You know, listen to the pregame show against Dakota. Dick said that there was several times watching the film that Forreston was just 1 or 2 blocks away from really snapping off a huge run.
Now he blocks your steps. Even.
Right. And that goes, I mean, yeah, you got your blocks and everything in your schemes, but that just tells you the athletic ability of Forreston. You know, they're 1 thing away from breaking off a big one. And we saw that against Dakota 2 plays in a row. Whether that was Forreston running great what they did or sucking in Dakota's safeties like a team that had never played defense before, or whatever the case may be.
It's kind of what it looked like, a combination of both.
I mean, basically, Forreston made Dakota look like a junior high team, in my opinion. Going forward, I just don't think EPC has they have the athletes, but they don't have enough athletes to compete with Forreston in this game. Forreston has benefited from their hard schedule. EPC has played a cushy schedule, whereas the first 3 weeks they played the worst team in the conference, realistically.
Right.
EPC has played 3 teams with a combined winning record of 1-8. Every team on the left side of that column at the top is going to beat the teams that EPC did the last 3 weeks. There's no way around it. That can work against EPC in this matchup, just because they haven't seen the physicality that is awaiting them this week. Forreston, you are very talented. You will win this game if you show up. If you do not punt the ball from your own 30 on a 4th and 1 this week, for the 3rd week in a row, you will let a better team back in the game that when they get a taste of winning, they don't give it up. So if you have a 4th and 1 at your own 30, punt the ball.
Well, and you're right. I mean, you saw that. That is what, in my opinion, that was the turning point of their game against Winslow in Week 2. They got away with it last week because they were already up 22-0 against Dakota. Granted, they allowed an opportunity for Dakota to get back in the ball game when it was still only 22-0. But they got lucky, or more so, not maybe so much lucky. It was a combination of luck and skill. They got lucky that they have such a good defense that they got the ball turned right back over to them.
Well, and how many times over the years haven't we heard coaches say, well, a 4th and 1, if you want to be a state title team, you count on your guys to get that 4th and 1.
And you do.
Or you do. Or my guys told me to go for it, we can get it for you, coach. Don't listen to your kids. Punt the ball.
Well, your kids are always going to tell you that they can get it.
Right.
Because if they don't, are you actually going to want them playing for you or starting for you?
They have one answer that they can be accepted with. We'll get it for you.
Yeah. But in all likelihood, you're correct. I mean, if Forreston converts the 4th and 1 against Winslow, do they go on to win that game? Yes. Theoretically. But at the same token, when you don't convert that and you don't punt the ball, I mean, I think that they had a good enough defense that had they punted the ball,
game's over.
yeah, let your defense take control of that game. You got a punter that can punt the ball 40-some yards.
Right.
It's not like you're going to get stuck at your 30-yard line.
Exactly.
You're going to put them back on their own 30-yard line. I'd take that chance.
Right.
Especially when you're up 2 points in a close ball game and the game's on the line.
Exactly.
Now, I'm not going to sit here and question Coach Diddick's thought process on what he wants to do. Because he's proven himself to be able to do that. But these are the same type of plays that we've seen him fail on in the past that have lost critical games. Dakota, 2011 quarterfinals. He did it then. That was a team that could have beat Dakota in that game. They had the lead.
A few years, 2 years in a row, where they were facing those undefeated. I mean, not one of those. I think they were both actually undefeated at the time. Both those EPC teams. One game in Lanark where, you keep running the ball, you run the clock out. You come home with a victory. That was Diddick's reputation. That's not anymore. Was it a blunder last week against Dakota? I'm not going to sit here and say that, but definitely something you look at and scratch your head a little bit.
Well, I think he thought he could have got it.
Right.
Same way he did against Lena Winslow. I think he's sitting there, 4th and 1. I'm going to get this.
Well, and realistically, your team hasn't done anything different in the last 2 years to make you think otherwise.
Right. Correct.
I mean, that's just the way it is. And and I'm going to go off again here, so I apologize. And if you're EPC on the other side of the ball, do not kick the ball to AJ Christensen. Lena Winslow, kick the ball to Christensen. Goodbye. Dakota, kick the ball to Christensen. Goodbye. Do you see a trend here? Do not kick the ball to him.
Right. Or Fox, for that matter.
Right.
I mean, they're both dangerous.
What have you been watching the last 2 years, if you're an opposing coach, that makes you think you want to kick to him?
I know. I'm trying to think of how many AJ has for return kicks, and I think it's got to be at least 6.
I mean, would you rather it go to the house, or would you rather them start at the 35?
I'm taking the 35
right.
myself. I'll take the
granted,
every time.
He's probably going to turn the 35 into 65, but still, don't kick to him.
I mean, even if you do kick to them, the chances of them starting at their own 35
slim
are very slim. I mean, Lena Winslow pinned Forreston deep, and I mean deep all game long in their matchup 2 weeks ago. And that's how, in my opinion, that's where Lena Winslow won that game. They just buried Forreston too deep where Forreston couldn't come out of it. Now, granted, in the second half, Forreston was able to make their way out of it, make it a game, had the opportunities to put the game away, and failed to do so. Again, coming back on the 4th and 1, not punting the ball when you're in your own territory, and leaving the door wide open for a more than capable team to take over. And I agree with you. You cannot allow EPC to do that this week. EPC is good. They are tough. They will be tougher than Dakota. I expect them to be tougher than Dakota. They're faster than Dakota. They're stronger on the line than Dakota. They're better than everything Dakota.
Right.
So
you group all that in. I'm still going to take Forreston. It's not going to be 40-0. Couple scores, maybe 3. Forreston just looked excellent last week.
Well, Forreston just proved exactly what they are. And you said it Forreston, despite the loss to Lena Winslow, they're still the team to beat. They're still the defending state champs. So, yeah, Lena Winslow got them, and that was great. But until you get them in the playoffs,
doesn't matter.
They're still the team to beat until they get beat in the playoffs where it matters. We saw this happen in 2000. Carthage lost to Scioto Northwestern La Harpe in the regular season. Those two teams ended up meeting up in the playoff or in the state championship game. Carthage won that game. Same thing I could see happening with Forreston and Lena Winslow. But I like Forreston in this game too.
And I'll take Forreston going forward.
So that is our recap going into week 4. We got a lot of Interesting matchups. Forreston EPC, Polo Aquin, and even the West Carroll Stockton game. The rest of them should pretty much play out to as expected. But 3 really good games to watch for going into week 4. As we stated, this week we'll also start to see where that playoff cutoff line will begin to rise as we get the playoff outlooks this week. And of course we will share those with you once we know. And going into next week, our state rankings will reflect where the new cutoff line is. So I expect some teams to fall out of our state rankings currently as we pull some 2A teams in. Now, for EPC fans, I would not expect EPC to be coming into that 1A category just as yet, because that cut line is not going to be at that level yet. So they'll still remain in our 2A poll, even though we know that the 1A poll is still putting them, or the AP poll is still putting them in 1A. If you haven't, though, remember to subscribe to our YouTube video. Just click on the subscription button. That way you can keep up to date with all our videos, and then make sure that you mark the little bell so you get them up to date right when we post. Again, another great week to look forward to the NUIC. We should see some things really start to take traction. As we noted, the first 3 weeks have kind of put into place what we anticipated. But should be a good week.
Yeah, I mean, realistically, it seems like we just got going in the season good, and after this coming week, you know, we're approaching that halfway mark, and some teams will really tell us what they're about, and some teams will kind of fade off. So
yeah, we're going to definitely see who the contenders are compared to the pretenders in a hurry. So get out to the ball games this week. There's a lot of good games. Keep supporting your teams. We expect the kids to keep working hard and doing what they should be doing. As always, root for the NUIC.